one-stop shop for great wrestling. It's the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Ray Russell brings a host of great shows right to your device. There's the Wrestling Memory Grenade, Regional Wrestling, the Wrestling Stoop with Bob Roop, the Amazing Puro Academy Show, Retro Wrestling Review with Gene Jackson, Dave Dynasty's long-running hit, Wrestling Nostalgia, Monday Warfare, Raw vs. Nitro, the hilarious Other Ship podcast, and a whole lot more. Great shows and great guests, but where do you find all this stuff? Really simple. Try logging on to WrestleCopia.com. As I like to say, it's your one-stop shop for great wrestling memories.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Outdated Wrestling Hour. Bob wanted to squeeze this in before he goes on wherever he's going. Anyway, I understand Brian R. Solomon is back on the show, and they're going to talk a little bit about basketball. Really? Oh, man. I used to be a basketball star in high school. No kidding. That's right. Bob, 94 years from now, was an absolute thriller point guard with a great dribbling style. You want to see it? All right, here we go. There we go. Can't touch this. Can't touch this. Take it from me. Oh. Not again. It's the Outdated Wrestling Hour. I guess I'm no Happy Heston. Cripes, my back. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Outdated Wrestling Hour. My name is Bob Smith. Welcome back to our podcast. First and foremost, get well, Joe Puccio. He's not with us this week. He has fallen under the weather a bit, and I just want to send good vibes out to Joe and his family, and he'll be back very, very soon, particularly when we start after this week doing some pre-recorded shows that we've been working on for the last 2 months because I'm going to be out of action for a while. You're really going to enjoy these shows. They're going to be a lot of fun. And Joe is on most of them. So check in with us every week. Nothing's going to change. In fact, if I had never said anything, I guarantee you wouldn't hear any difference in the content of the show at all. These are regular shows. They were just recorded ahead of time because I'm going to be away for reasons I'm not going to talk about. Brian and I will probably get into it a little bit. And by the way, our special guest is Brian R. Solomon, who is, see if you can guess what our topic is once you hear the old man in the beginning. Maybe you'll figure this out. It's going to be a juxtaposition type of show. I think it's an interesting topic, and I know you're going to like it. Hold on for a minute or two. We'll be right back with the great Brian R. Solomon, the two-time Wrestling Observer Book of the Year award winner. What a writer. What a mind. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. I'm so privileged and thankful that Brian R. Solomon is here. He is the two-time Wrestling Observer Book of the Year award winner for his books on Gorilla Monsoon and The Sheep, which are both invaluable. You must have them if you don't. Also, he's the podcaster Shut Up and Wrestle on the Arcadian Vanguard Network, which just did a stellar show with MJF on it. And I want to welcome him back to our show for the umpteenth time because he's such a nice guy. It's Brian R. Solomon. Welcome back.
Thanks, Bob. It's great to be here as always.
Well, I by the way, there was a nice get with MJF. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it was very casual. Like even when I told Brian last that it had come together, it happened so fast that I told him, and it had already happened because I'd been talking to MJF here and there on social media, just, chatting about things. And it started when he wanted a copy of my Gorilla Monsoon book. And so we just started talking, and I don't want to be one of those people where the minute I start chatting with somebody interesting in wrestling, I go, "Hey, you want to be on my podcast?" Because then I feel like they regret even talking to me. You know what I mean? So I try to be casual about it. It occurred to me at some point, "Hey, organically, what do you think?" And he was just literally like, "Hey, that sounds like a great idea. Let's try to make it happen." And then on a Sunday morning, I was just like, "Hey, have you given it any thought?" And he just goes, "How about today? Let's do it now." I'm just like, "Oh, okay." And it just kind of came together and happened right out of the blue.
You know why this works for you, my friend? You said it yourself. You're the Dick Cavett of wrestling. It's not gonna no, seriously. It's an intellectual conversation. It's not gonna be gushy. "Do you remember when you pinned,
I think
Orange
that
Cassidy 3 years ago?" It's not that type of a show. Your show is singular in that, well, I think you talk on the wrestlers at their level because of your past in the industry.
well, thank you. And yeah, it comes from interviewing so many of them. You just realize the kind of things that they want to talk about or the way they want to talk about things that's going to make them respond better. And I think that he wanted to do the show because he knew, because I had explained to him, it wasn't going to be the same stuff he always talks about, right? It wasn't going to be the super fanboy stuff about his career. I said, no, this is going to be different, and I think you can handle it because he's a big fan of old school wrestling. When people hear it, they're gonna know that like I've said, he's one of us, whether he
Yeah.
wants to admit it or not. I'm
Mhm.
not even kidding. Like, I did not have to hold his hand. I didn't have to carry this conversation. He's sitting there talking about Buzz Sawyer and Adrian Adonis and the Von Erichs, Bockwinkel, like, just on his own, and I'm just going with it. So, I mean, he is the real deal, and he
Yes.
enjoyed having that kind of conversation for a change.
Bill Apter used to say the same thing about Triple H when he was getting to know him, is that Hunter was a student of the game. I mean, really
Yes,
knew about the old stuff, and in a way, he's a conduit to the old days to the new days because he was an old stuff fan who entered around 91 or 92 or something like that, and just
something like that,
he had
yeah.
all, 15 years worth of watching it before that, which is just made him a perfect guy to run a wrestling company when you think about it.
Yes, and they're both like, when you hear the MJF interview, it's not just talking about old school stuff. He's able to really articulate in a way. I mean, he's a young guy, he's 30 years old. He's able to articulate how it informs what he does in a way that makes sense, like to talk about the psychology of it and everything. And by the way, without ever once really breaking kayfabe, I have to tip my hat to him. He is a master. He could talk about stuff in such a way that he really did sound like the MJF heel from TV, but just dialing it down in order to have a conversation like this. But he didn't sound like, oh, I'm now stepping out of my character. You know what I mean? He was very, very good at what he did. Really good.
Hats off. I thought that was really out of the blue for me because,
Thank you.
most of the time you and I are talking to people who are of older age than that. And to have someone who's really entrenched in the business right now as your lead guest, that's just wonderful.
He's one of the youngest people I've ever had on the show. Now that I think about it, God, he might be the youngest. I don't know.
Mhm.
Like, although I've had Lizzie Flanagan on, the author, and she's pretty young. I mean, I've had one or two people in their 20s, but he's definitely among the youngest people I've ever had.
Well, let's get into our topic. And people are going to go, Bob, what are you doing? I'm going, I will make this fit. We're going to talk about the New York Knicks. All right. To start things off, to segue into what my main point is. Forgive me if I'm going to babble a little bit here, Brian, but I want to get this out. Grew up a New York Knicks fan, saw the 70 and 73 championship teams. I was around for that. I was a young man and then into my mid-teens when they finally won that in 73 with a stacked team that had all the great players on it, like Willis Reed and Walt Frazier, and the additions of Jerry Lucas and Roman Monroe pushed them over the top. They were champion that year. So I grew up a fan and got into the newspaper business and got to be a sports editor, and I did enough work in the New York City metro area that I actually was able to join the Pro Basketball Writers Association. I covered both the New Jersey Nets and the New York Knicks. I don't want people to think I was a beat writer because I never was. Geographically, it was too far away, and it was, again, the pre-internet era. There was no, geez, I don't even know there were fax machines back then. I really don't. It was so long ago. And you had to send clips to the various PR people for the teams via the mail, regular old snail mail. But I developed a good enough sports writer reputation that I became a semi-regular at the Garden, and that was the Bernard King era, into the Patrick Ewing era. And they're memories I have always cherished. It's just I got to be part of, that scene, even though the teams never won a championship. So it's all these years later, and Jalen Brunson and this unbelievable squad of gentlemen as well as great athletes. I have never seen an NBA playoff like it because the league has never seen an NBA playoff like it. To come from behind virtually every game and lose like 2 games within the last 20 that they played or something like that, it's just so historic. But here's the deal. Knicks fans around here were starving. Sports fans around here, regardless of whether they like the NBA or not, were starving for a champion in this town. It's been a while. The reaction from everybody from Long Island to upstate New York has been absolutely off the charts. People saw all the videos of the outdoor gatherings when they won the championship in Game 5. What's going on in Midtown, and we're in Queens and we're in Long Island. People were running out of their houses. People were shooting off fireworks. People were losing their minds. And it was a different kind of a vibe because a lot of people, when the Knicks won, broke down in tears
Sure.
because they thought, "We're never gonna see a championship with this franchise." 1973 is a long time ago. That was the last one. So the vibe in the city, I'm a 67-year-old man, I went out and bought a championship hat, all right? It just takes you over. My wife is not an NBA fan in any sense of the word. I used to bring her to the games at the Garden, she'd bring a paperback book to read. She had no interest in the Knicks, all right, or basketball. Here's the deal. She watched this playoff series along with me and fell in love with the team. There's just something about this particular group of men, the coach, everything. It's been amazing. But the point I'm making is there's a vibe in New York City right now. You're in Connecticut, but there's a vibe in New York. I've never seen people so happy. I am telling you, I am not making this up. People are pointing at each other on the street. If you have like a Nick hat on, you give each other a thumbs up or a fist bump. Complete, total strangers. Some people who don't even speak your language. I have never, it's what America needs right now. This spirit of unbelievable togetherness. I have never experienced anything like it in my entire sports life. Nothing like it. It's been incredible.
I remember the 86 Mets. I mean, there was a feeling like that when I was a kid. The neighborhood went nuts. There was fireworks going off. There was maybe a little bit of slightly unruly stuff happening, but it felt at least like a big neighborhood celebration. Same thing with the 96 Yankees when they started off that big run, which had been their first taste of anything in like 15 years. And that was big. And also, Bob, I'm sure you remember when the Rangers won in 94. I remember that. And I have virtually no, stake in hockey at all. But I knew that the Rangers had the big notorious drought at the time in the NHL. And that was a big one too in 94.
That was big. I agree with you that. It wasn't this big. I mean,
probably not. I mean, I'm not in New York anymore, so it's hard to say.
There's the thing. I am, and I have never seen anything like this. I was around for 86. I was around. No, I wasn't. I was upstate still then. But I've been around. I've lived in New York City proper since 1994.
Yeah.
All right, since that year, and all those Yankee championships and whatnot, the 4 in a row, 5 in a row, whatever it was. That was big. People went nuts. Not like this, but they're going nuts in a different kind of a way.
Yeah.
I went to Dick's Sporting Goods Sunday morning, about 11 o'clock in the morning, and they put out all the New York Knicks, and people were buying this stuff up left, right, and sideways. People of all ages, people older than I was, were buying memorabilia. It's just the vibe is different. People waiting patiently online. It was like it was like a big birthday party or something when you're 5 years old. That's what the feeling was like. I can't describe it. It's been the tonic for what ails me, I'll tell you that right now. It's easy to get cynical in these times, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But all your cynicism strips away. You see athletes giving their all. I mean, coming from behind 20 points, 29 points in one of the games, it was just spectacular. And everybody fell in love with these guys. They fell in love with the coach. And better yet, they fell in love with their neighbors and people they haven't even met. That is a wonderful thing.
I was at an Italian feast even here in the Bridgeport area up here in Connecticut over the weekend, and there were people there with Knicks stuff on. I saw an entire family wearing Knicks gear and everything. So, yeah, even out here in the outskirts of the tri-state area, there's definitely a feeling that trickles down.
Now, here's how this ties into what we talk about, pro wrestling. It is 1973 in the Hamburg Fieldhouse, the greatest televised match I have ever seen. I know a lot of stuff has happened in the years since. I'm still a teenager, young teenager at that point. And it's a WWF Tag Team Championship match pitting the nasty Mr. Fuji and Professor Toru Tanaka against the unlikely tag team of Tony Garea and Haystacks Calhoun. It's a televised match. I'm watching it on, I guess it was All-Star Wrestling or Championship Wrestling, whatever the show was. It's an action-packed match, and the wily villains were on top most of the match. Comes a point later where I think it was a failed salt throw somewhere in there. It's a long time ago, so I don't know. But I do remember the finish of this match like it was yesterday, the very last second. I think Fuji got a face full of salt, and Haystacks is in the ring with him and drops on him. You know how Haystacks was. He never really could do a flying splash. He kind of falls on people.
Yes.
Bam! Down he goes, flattening out Fuji. At that moment, Tony Garea climbs his back, puts both fists in the air in triumph, and the referee counts to 3. Now, mind you, this is 1973. The place goes bonkers. I mean, for that era particularly, bonkers. And for some reason, for Hamburg, they had a lot of school-age kids and college-age kids in the crowd, right?
Sure.
It was a mixed crowd. I mean, people were leaping out of their chairs, rushing the ring, screaming like it's, the end of World War II. I'm serious. They were out of their minds happy, right? Thrilled. And here's something I have never seen on a wrestling show, or at least on a East Coast wrestling show ever before. You remember how at the end they would cut to McMahon, he'd say a few words and they'd go off the air, or even not. They'd show the wrestlers in the ring and it would say an intermediate production produced by Guy Galante, right? That would be the last thing it would say. In this case, that's not what they did. You see, after commercial break, they come back after all the screaming and carrying on. And you see Vince McMahon with a microphone with his jacket on, surrounded by high school and college age boys in a circle, like a semicircle behind him. And McMahon goes, well, we've seen wrestling history this week in the WWF. We have new tag team champions, and I think they're the kind of champions we can all be proud of. And McMahon just says, what do you think, guys? And all of these young men were, yeah. I mean, if you ever seen anything like that at the end of a WWF show, I don't recall anything like that. The only thing it's close to is when he let the kids run in the ring after a Backlund match that one time.
Yeah, that was wild, and I think that was pretty spontaneous too, if I'm not mistaken. It just started happening, and they just let it go. After a while, they just went with it.
If you watch, there is a tape of that floating around on YouTube, but if you watch it, you'll see they at one point they go, oh, the hell, let him in there.
Yeah, they just let it go after a while. Yeah.
So here's the point I'm making with all this. These people in Hamburg, way back when, all those decades ago, were ecstatic. They were over the moon happy. I was happy watching it home. I thought it was thrilling. I thought it was exciting. But then I cut back to today's stuff. I don't think those emotions can be elicited anymore.
No.
In pro wrestling.
No, most
not
definitely
even close.
No.
Because, well, part of the factor was, let's face it, in the 70s, a lot of people really still believed. I mean, they were real diehard believers.
They did. People try to brainwash you and say that wasn't true is false. Those people were not around, okay? I was certainly in crowds, and you're older than me, and you were in crowds where you knew that even if you didn't, a significant portion of that crowd believed 100%. Yes.
Yeah, and, even if they didn't, the fact that it was such a closed door of a business.
They lost themselves in it. They may not have known. In the back of their head, a lot of them had a thing of like, I don't really know. But they were willing to give themselves over to it. And then a bunch of them really did genuinely believe 100%.
Sure. I mean, and those people were forced to swallow a lot of stupid stuff. Even then, I mean, when you saw, let's say, Randy Colley became Ripper Hawkins, who became Moondog Hawkins, who became Moondog Rex within 5 or 6 weeks in front of the same people in the same building. They turned to each other and went, what the hell, right? Seriously. but they went along with it anyway.
And then they tried to pass him off as a member of Demolition in the
Yeah,
beginning.
the original Demolition. We
And
just
they
talked about that,
finally
yeah.
went too far, and he had to leave. And they were like, listen, the fans are not buying this.
The fans were chanting Moondog Rex.
Yes.
Poor guy. You know, he was a gentleman. I met him, real Southern gentleman, really nice guy. He was the all-purpose room of pro wrestlers. Every organization, if you needed somebody, call Randy Colley. I have nothing but the utmost admiration for him because he could step in, be a heel, be a face, whatever they needed him to do. He was big enough that he was credible, not bad in the ring, and the type of guy that gets overlooked in the annals of history. But you know what? He was kind of like a glue guy, somebody you could put other people around and have a good matches and the realistic type action they were looking for.
Yeah, most definitely. And, and now, of course, as I'm sure you're getting to, those feelings are gone.
They're
And
gone.
you can't get it back because the cat's out of the bag. I mean, how people don't give themselves over to it like they used to, and they're not encouraged to, honestly. You almost feel like if you did that now, you'd feel like a complete idiot. Because even the product itself doesn't believe in itself that way anymore. Like you'd feel it every now and then they do something that does go above and beyond. Like when Cody won the title from Roman Reigns, there was a genuine feeling of emotion there for sure. Little things. Well, I remember when Bianca Belair and Sasha Banks were in the main event, WrestleMania, and it was two black women, and they were starting to tear up. You could feel there was a little bit of reality there. There was something recently that I saw that felt like, okay, we're getting into, I can't remember what it was. I know, it was this, believe it or not, it was this El Grande Americano thing in AAA but again, it was the Mexican fans. They sold it. The crowd got emotional, but that's a whole different wrestling culture. Okay.
Mhm.
The Lucha Libre culture, there is still some of that in there. So, and I don't even know if you wanted to touch on that, but there is. We're talking about North America here. We're talking about US and Canada. It's just very jaded, very cynical. They're watching it in a very ironic way. They're very often being entertained and they're loving it and they're enjoying it, but they're not emotionally attached to it. They just want to see a good show.
There's one that gets a 50% grade in that regard, though, in recent times. I think it was the Gunther Cena retirement match.
Yes, but it's always very meta, though, Bob. It's like the same way that a lot of fans got upset or hurt with The Undertaker losing to Brock Lesnar.
Mm-hmm.
It still has that sense of like, well, they're upset at the bookers. They're upset at the company.
Yes.
They're upset at the company. And that was very much with Cena, even more than Undertaker. They were pissed at the company. How could you do this to Cena on the way out? That's what it was.
Part of my point, though, is I was referring to the match itself, the way the crowd was reacting to near pinfalls and big moves. And it was really hot in that arena. I mean, the crowd sounded to me like an old school crowd during the match.
Yes. Okay.
Now, I'm not even talking about the finish, but just the way people were really, you know what? They really cared. There's the factor that's different now. When an old school baby face was carted out on a stretcher, people cared. They sent cards and letters to the TV station saying, "Get well soon."
Well, I think it was somebody, it might have been you or Steve or somebody on a show a while back. I remember talking about a scene where they remember, I think it was Tony Gurria, or there was a match where the heels got a hold of a chair and the crowd was like aghast and appalled. And the baby face got the chair away from the heel and threw it away. And the crowd was cheering because he had restored order. He had stopped the heel from going too far. Tony Gurria would be booed today. In fact, that's a way that a heel today gets heat, by teasing an extra level of violence and then not delivering it, even if it's against the guy that they like. They will boo if the heel does not deliver the violence he had promised to deliver.
How about the Bruno Zbyszko match?
Yes.
You evil son of a, right?
People very
How could
upset.
you do that?
That's another one when they show the crowd, the little old Italian ladies are all like in shock and people are really genuinely upset at what happened. There's like a weird hush that comes over the crowd. There's a puddle of blood in the ring. I mean, yeah.
Bill Apter tells the story better than anybody because he was there when Koloff beat Bruno Sammartino in 1971 at Madison Square Garden. Madison Square Garden again. when the pinfall took place and the bell rang, first of all, they feared handing Cole off the belt. They thought there would be a riot, so they
Yeah, they
didn't do
didn't.
that.
They didn't
And
even announce
secondly
it.
Bill Apter put it best. He said, "It was stone silence, save for the gentle sound of quiet weeping." These people really freaking cared.
Yes.
They really did, and this was just a loss. Bruno wasn't hurt or anything like that. He just lost the title he'd held for so many years.
I had the privilege of talking to Bruno about it one time, and he said at first he said this other times too, I think. He thought that he got whacked in the head and sort of like rang his bell because he couldn't hear anything. He remembers thinking like, did I just get my bell wrong? And then he realized it was truly silence. He also told me, which I've never heard him say anywhere else, that when he was in the locker room afterwards, and keep in mind, Bob, as you know, it was his idea to drop the belt. He had had enough.
Mhm.
And he's in the locker room afterwards. He said he felt bad. He felt terrible that he'd hurt so many people by doing that. And he knew that his decision was the cause of all those emotions and that crying and weeping. And he kind of felt bad about what he'd done to the fans that night.
That sounds like Bruno.
Yeah. Even though
You
they
know
would never have known that it was him, it was his idea that broke their hearts. He still felt bad.
But and you bring up Bruno Sammartino. There's a guy who protected the business every moment of he was awake. He was serious about a lot of things that people don't give him credit for, like making sure the undercard guys got paid and, certain things that they had villains do that he took umbrage with, like some certain German wrestlers and things like that. I know he took umbrage at this stuff. It was too far. It was too much. It was too crazy and wild. I just like the integrity he had both personally and in the ring. I'm a huge Bruno Sammartino fan, and getting to know him a little bit at the end, that was sweet. He was really something else.
Yeah, he was. Even when I did the Sheik book, I think I might have mentioned it in there. He was one of the only people that ever raised any kind of concern because people go, well, you couldn't do a gimmick like that today. And they're right. There'd be too much outrage and protest. And, Bruno was one of the only people that said, I think this is in poor taste. We have fans that are Arabic, that are Muslim even, and I don't know if they would like to see something like that. And because that really was not an issue. The Sheik went his entire career without a single public outcry from anyone that it was in bad taste. And so Bruno raising a concern privately was one of the only things I ever encountered of anybody thinking that shouldn't be done.
Yeah, most people went along with it, including wrestlers who probably didn't even like the gimmick either.
Sure.
You
A
know,
lot of them
I
didn't. Yeah.
I'm sure there were bad guy wrestlers who said, "You're gonna do this tonight," and they probably think, "Oh, no." Right?
Yeah.
Seriously, I know. Who did I talk to that expressed that? They wanted me to do such and such. It might have been Cactus in the early days. Oh, yeah, it was. Cactus when he was in the USWA, he was doing the Texas-Memphis run at that time, and they asked him to do oh, no, they kept they kept asking him to do some kind of a leap from the apron. I don't think it was his elbow, but some kind of leap onto the apron where he ends up flat. And the first time he did it, like a pool of blood, real blood formed from underneath his head. The promoter said, "This is great. You got to do that again tomorrow night." And he's like, "What?"
That's why the
So,
boys got to look out for themselves. That's why.
you hope he got an extra 50. That's all I know. Jeez. But you know what I mean? If it looked that good and that floored on TV or whatever it was, they were like, "Whoa, this is great. We got to get him to do this more often." But that sounds like the old school wrestling promoters and the old school wrestlers too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, some of these blade jobs they did in the day were just off the charts crazy.
Captain Lou.
Oh, as a matter of rule, yes.
Captain Lou made no attempt to even try to hide it. The guy would just gig himself right in full view. Not only that, but even the scarring that he had. I mean, he wasn't even trying to do it in a way that would not disfigure himself. He just didn't care. It was just straight. It was almost like he was doing tic-tac-toe on his forehead. He did not care.
There was one time where he did it even worse. I'm watching the Albany interviews. They all did the interviews for all the different markets, but I'm watching the Albany ones. Albano comes out. I don't even remember what wrestler he's representing. The guy says, and then Bruno comes out. And then they put a close up on Albano's face. And Albano had marks all across his forehead, down his cheeks, into his chin. Every area of his face was scarred. I am telling you. I am not making this up. And he goes, Chief Jay Strongbow, you did this to me. You did this to me. And I thought that maybe it's some match somewhere he took his hatchet that he had and carved him up. But no, I'm sure he just had a couple of cocktails before the match and went nuts on himself. And
Sure.
this was not a work. These were like recent razor blade marks. It was unbelievable. I never saw anything quite like it.
And all to draw a house in Albany,
Yeah.
right? It's crazy.
Yeah. But that was the credo back then. You got it. In a weird, twisted way, I give them all credit. Because
Sure.
again, it gets back to the fact that's why beat Albano's guys, beat the Grand Wizards guys, beat Fred Blassie's men. They believed these were mean, nasty people. I remember I'm going to have Johnny Roz in the show pretty soon. And I remember sitting in Albany at the second row ringside. I'm talking to an old lady. I don't know how we started talking, but I'm like, yeah, I'm looking at the program. Okay. I said, whoa, Johnny Roz is on the show. And she goes, he stinks. Now, she didn't say that because she thought he stunk as a wrestler. It's because he was a bad guy.
Yes. And but to your point though, I mean, these guys were committed and the blood was part of the commitment. I just finished writing a column for PWI. It'll be out later this summer about the 1957 Madison Square Garden riot.
Oh, yeah.
And which I've always wanted to write about. And the riot started in a tag team match, the main event. It was Rocca and Edward Carpentier against Dr. Jerry Graham and Dick the Bruiser. And so it happened because at the finish, basically there was double juice at the end. And the violence just made people go insane. I mean, that would happen back then, as you know, seeing the blood. And it's like Graham comes in the ring, causes a DQ, knocks Rocca in the head. Rocca starts bleeding. They got the DQ finish. Rocca's enraged. He grabs Graham, smashes him into the turnbuckle. Now Graham's bleeding. And the thing is, back then, the business was so protected that you had sports writers and even, I think, people with the athletic commission that were trying to figure out what happened with the blood. They didn't know how it was done back then. They assumed that the blood in wrestling was fake. A lot of people thought it was like blood capsules. And they're taking a look at these guys and they're trying to figure it out. It's like you're reading the news reports going, they're so close because they're going to Graham like they're being questioned. They got hauled in front of the commission and they're going to Graham. Well, Rocca, I know you punched Rocca in the head a few times and we looked at his head, but it looks like he's got cuts on his head, like slices on his head. And they're going, how did that happen? It looks like he was cut and like sliced. And Graham's going, well, I don't know what you're talking about. I just, I was hitting him in the head with my fist. So if he's bleeding, it's because of my fist. But it's like it's one of these rare times where they're taking a real close look and going, what's really going on here? But these guys were so committed that even in front of the athletic commission and in front of reporters, they are not breaking. They're not breaking. They all got fined and suspended and everything else, but they're not going to break kayfabe.
I'll tell you what. There's the thing too, when it comes to doing what you call blade jobs, right? The man on the street can't fathom hacking himself open like that. Other athletes would never intentionally.
No. Could you imagine
make
an actor?
bleed.
People talk about wrestling being like a movie or a TV show. Could you imagine they're doing a movie and there's a fight in the movie and the guy's bleeding and they go to him, we'd like it if you got some real blood for this. Could you cut yourself? They would, not in a million years, but
right,
wrestlers
not in a million
do it.
years. But there's the thing. I don't think people could fathom that. I didn't know how they did it when I was a kid.
Right.
But I knew they were doing it somehow. There's a funny thing.
Right. You knew something. You could see the scars and the placement. And I know a lot of us had to go like, why is it always in the same spot? Why is it never, I remember as a little kid, the thing that blew it open for me is I would look at the pictures in the magazine and I think it was the British Bulldogs, but it would be other guys. And I would look at their heads and you could see that all the scarring was only in one place, all the scars in one exact location. And I remember going like, that's not a coincidence. That's intentional. There's no way they're just constantly getting opened up in the same exact place. And that's what kind of got me thinking,
Well, how about the guys like Terry Funk and Dusty Rhodes who would do other parts of the body, like
Dusty
arms
on his arms?
Like
yeah, Dusty had scarring on his arms.
I really think if you watched, and you probably own a copy of it, I Like to Hurt People. Obviously you do, right? Judging from your show.
Yes.
Your podcast. If you look, there's a scene of Sheep doing the Sheik doing the pencil jab thing on Rhodes, and I'm wondering if that's where he got those scars. I mean, that would be a
Or
coincidence.
something like that. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it was partly to sell it because if you're getting stabbed somewhere and you're not bleeding, it looks really unusual, really strange. You got to do something. Someone else had those. A more recent wrestler, maybe it was Devon Dudley or New Jack. I remember seeing another guy that had scars on his arm. Well, Sabu certainly was covered in them, but a lot of those were legit. I mean, when he was wrapping himself in barbed wire in Japan, but yeah.
You know, I met him when he was a rookie. He was the nicest cat. I mean, he was just soft spoken, and in fact, they invited when I was in Memphis. They invited me to go clubbing with them after the show, and I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't know about that.
Probably a
But
good idea that you said no.
Yeah. But because I knew the Memphis, some of those clubs were kind of unsavory. We'll put it that way. So
That happened with me with Randy Orton and Trevor Murdoch, and boy, am I glad I said no. Actually, it wasn't even a dance club they were going into. It was
this is what I'm talking about too.
It was a club of another variety. Yes.
Yeah.
And it was one of those moments where life, you're at a crossroads of life.
How do I want to handle this?
And I
Exactly
said,
right.
nope, that's okay. I want to keep working here. Thank you.
More proof to the fans that listen to the show that have always been boring, but there you go. So, but back to the then versus now aspect of it, though. I mean, I can't imagine people filling the streets after, let's say, a big title change at a pay-per-view at Madison Square Garden and jumping up and down and setting fire to cars, which is wrong, by the way. That's the one bad aspect of this is that the goofball nation is still alive and well. And ugh. But you know what I'm saying? It's like I can't imagine people being worked up about it because they're all one of two things. That was a great show, not a card, a show. And number two is they're here to book along with the bookers and say this guy's not getting pushed well enough, or I don't like the pacing of the show, and they're more into the behind the scenes than they are in the actual ring action, and that does not lead to passion for virtually anything as far as I'm concerned. It was that tinge of realism that wrestling had in those eras, 70s probably till the expansion, and maybe a little bit past that in other organizations where you had people. Oh, Dave Rosenbaum said once he was at, or he was a former PWI writer, you know Dave's name.
Yeah.
He said he was down south somewhere and he saw the Rock and Roll Express beat the Midnight Express for one of their titles, and teenagers were embracing and hugging, and people were rushing. It was that same thing we're talking about now, that deep caring about what you're looking at and thinking that this is important. You're investing yourself and you really enjoy your fan favorites.
Yeah.
There are no fan favorites anymore. Everybody breaks the rules. Everybody gangs up on people.
Right.
There is no right and wrong. It's just who can get away with what.
Even the announcers no longer do a good job of letting you know who's right and who's wrong, who's good and who's bad. You know, I hear supposed babyface announcers today say things all the time like, well, you have to win every way you can, any means necessary. And I'm going, well, that's what the heel announcers used to say. Only the heel announcers. And the babyface announcers would talk about honor and right and wrong and sticking up for what's right. And they don't even bother to do that anymore.
A champion we all can be proud of.
Right. There's none of that anymore. I mean, Gorilla Monsoon would make reference to the man upstairs all the time. Remember how he would say that?
Yeah.
Oh, the Hulks are giving thanks to the man upstairs before the match. Can you imagine a wrestling announcer today, you know, invoking God in that way during a match? You know, that kind of thing is out the window. And now it's almost like, now, you know, post-Attitude Era, post-ECW, post-NWO, they make you feel like you're a sap and a fool for being a good guy. Like everybody's got to be out for themselves. Look at Roman Reigns now, what they're doing with him. I legitimately can't tell if he's supposed to be a good or a bad guy. And I'm not saying that to be snarky or ironic. They had the feud with him and Jacob Fatu where I'm going, I legitimately do not understand here who is supposed to be the good guy and who's supposed to be the bad guy. They got Roman Reigns, who is, and I understand Roman Reigns had turned face and definitely seemed to be a baby face when he first turned. But the way they're presenting him now, he's entitled, he's arrogant, he's a bully, demanding fealty from everyone. And I'm going, how is this the good guy? In what universe is this the good guy? And to be honest, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to still think he is or not.
as we're talking, it's a Tuesday after a Raw, and did you see last night's Raw? I mean, I
Yes.
think they turned him yesterday.
I guess they did, because now
Yeah.
Fatu, he's ordering Fatu to attack LA Knight. I mean, he's clearly a heel again, but for a while there, it was not being made clear at all. And it does feel that way sometimes, like they genuinely either don't know, the fans don't know, the fans don't care. There have been things I've seen that this is when I come to you and I say that fans just want to see a good show. They want to see spectacle, and that's all they care about. Classic examples of this recently that you had, they love Seth Rollins, right? He comes out, they sing his song endlessly, they're cheering for him and they're doing this. Now he's in a situation where Bronson Reed all of a sudden attacks him and is splashing him from the top rope repeatedly. Crowd's cheering for it. The crowd's chanting, "One more time, one more time." This is against the guy they supposedly love. They sing his song, they cheer for him when he's talking, and they're now cheering for the guy that's brutalizing him just because it's fun to watch.
Well,
And that's all they care about.
when they recently tried to turn Randy Orton, it didn't work.
Didn't work because they just kept cheering for whatever he did, no matter what it was, against whoever he did it.
Yeah, he's RKOing people for no good reason, and the fans are screaming one more
Loving it.
time,
Right,
which
one more
goes to
time.
show you that today's fans come for the spots. I don't even think they care win 3/4 of the time. I think they want those finishing maneuvers that they find exciting and something else exciting and over the top during the match. And I think almost everything else, particularly on the indies, is worse.
The first time I noticed it was a few years back in WWE. Now it's quite a while back now, maybe close to 10 years, when Chris Jericho came back to WWE. He had been gone for a couple of years. He came back on Raw, and the crowd starts chanting, "This is awesome," right? They're ecstatic to see him. And, he hadn't been around. He's a face. And then all of a sudden the lights go down, they come up. Now he's surrounded by the Wyatt family. This is when the Wyatt family was new and was hot and really over with the original crew. Wyatt family corners Jericho now and starts like attacking him, en masse, the whole group of them. And the crowd starts chanting, "This is awesome." That's when I went, okay, I don't think I understand this anymore. I don't understand the mentality of being a wrestling fan anymore. Like, what is happening right now?
Yeah. Well, all I know is this. I miss the days when people really cared. They cared about injuries. They cared about their favorites. It was a different vibe when you went into the arenas, I remember a match in Albany. I hate to bring up Albany all the time. It was Superstar Graham had just pretty much won the belt, his new purple winged belt back then. You remember that one?
Sure. Well, I don't remember, but I've seen it.
And here comes Peter Maivia, the smiling, happy, high chief Peter Maivia,
Right.
Maivia, and he's he wrestles his match and does a great job. And in the end, Maivia wins by count out. And it wasn't like a count out where Graham was like, "I'll just stay down and sneak out that way with my title." No, he had hurt Graham, and Graham went flying over the ropes, and he couldn't make it back in time. So it was just a count out victory. But the fans were like, I'll never forget this. It was older men. He's coming down the aisle, and they're patting him on the back, going, "You'll get him next time. You'll get him next time. What a job you just did. That was great. You're going to be the champ." They did not show that they were upset over a count out. They thought what they saw was legitimate, and they think he's just the next match away from being the next champion. I loved that kind of thing back then.
Yeah. And, it was a subculture, and that needs to be said. And it also depended where you were in the country. I think a couple of things on this. It was a certain subculture. Like, I think even if you went back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, the majority of Americans at large who didn't follow wrestling, they knew what the deal was with it. It was not like if you read newspaper accounts, even back then, the reporters are making fun of it. They know what it is. The commission knew what it was. People in the know. But the fans, and you can make fun all you want, the fans were a subculture of the American demographic. And within that subculture, the majority of them believed, for sure, in that time. I don't think the population at large did, but the majority of fans did. And the other thing about that was that I think the people that I'm trying to when I talked about the different parts of the country, I think there was different types of belief. Like I'm a northerner, I'm from New York, so I'm very careful when I talk about these things because I don't want people to get the impression that I'm a typical New Yorker saying people from the South are dumb or people from the North are smarter. I'm not trying to say that, but what I am trying to say is I think because when you see things, when you look at Memphis and when you look at the Carolinas and you hear the stories about the Gulf Coast and the Gulas and Welch territories and all the things that happen there, I do think, particularly in markets that didn't have any big sports teams, that were not heavily urbanized, that it's like when you hear about the World of Worlds thing in the 30s about how people were killing themselves and wanted to flee the country and thought we were being invaded by Martians, right? That was not everybody in America. What I'm trying to say, I think that there was more innocence, let's just say, to those fans. There was more gullibility, I think. There was more naivete. Whereas I think the fans in a lot of urban centers in the North, like New York, Boston, Philadelphia, they tended to be, they believed, but they tended to be a little more, have that doubt in the back of their minds, like we talked about. They tended to be more street smart. Let's put it that way. These were people like, I'm not the first one to talk. Brian Last has talked about there being more, even in the old days, more of the smart fan demographic you would find in places like New York and Philly. These were fans that were they were more street smart. You couldn't fool these people. These were the people that were the con men of the world. They were the ones working shell games in Times Square. These were people that were not going to be maybe as easily duped. And so I think there was more of a streak of smartness, and I mean that in the wrestling sense only, among fans in the North than you saw in the South. They were more of New York is the showbiz capital. They were not as 100% fully on board as fans in the South were. And I'm trying to say that as delicately as I can without people coming after me. I don't know how you feel about that, Bob.
Well, I'm going to segue to Memphis, 1991, when I went down and spent a week on the tour. The whole the Memphis A show and 2 B shows, right? First of all, I arrive in Memphis, get my rental car, and I have to go to a drugstore to pick up some provisions. I think I wanted Q-tips or something. And so I'm walking in, lovely young lady leaves the drugstore. She goes, "How you doing?" I'm like, "I'm not used to this.
Right. Yes.
I'm from New York. People
Being
avert
acknowledged
their
by
eyes when you
strangers. Right.
No, hey, how are you? And everywhere I went, how are you? Well, okay, that's the beginning. I'm like, I'm going to like this. I said,
There's
and
more
then
innocence. There's
right.
more of that. Yes.
And
Especially
then
back then.
before the Monday night big show in Memphis, Lawler set up a car trip. I'm on it. Doug Gilbert is in the car. I think another one of the preliminary wrestlers, maybe 2, and a guy that Lawler knew who was driving us all in his white minivan, right? And we go to some rural town. I cannot remember if it was West Memphis, Arkansas, or even another state. I just don't remember. But we're going through. I'm talking the South. I'm talking the shanties with the big wheel parked in front, and miles of nothing. Right, just swampy type area. This was. So we get to the car and all the regulars there, and I remember being in the locker room talking to Tony Anthony, all the crew, Dirty White Girl. They're really nice. All these people were great. This isn't the point I'm going to make, though. I'm standing. They had a little area where the wrestlers could stand near the locker room, so I decided to leave the locker room and watch the show in a standing position. Behind this chicken wire or whatever it was. Guy walks up and he goes, "Hey, I saw you on the show Saturday and Sunday." I said, "Well, oh, thank you very much." And we start talking, and he was probably about 35, 40 years old, and the most innocent wrestling fan I've ever met. That Bill Dundee, I really like him. He's a good man. I think he's gonna win the title again soon. He's coming up next month against blah, blah. I said, "Well, and I wasn't gonna break it. I said, "Yeah, I think you're right. He's great, blah, blah." And we had this it was like I was talking to one of my 15-year-old friends.
Mm-hmm.
14, 13. But again, that innocence and the crowds there were so still in 91, still good guy, bad guy, like the old Albany's crowds. It's like we're talking 2.5 decades later, And that vibe was still there, that we really care about these guys, or we really hate that guy for what he did on TV last week.
And I think here's part of that difference too. And I've thought about this a lot because I've had conversations with fans from all over the wrestling landscape who grew up with different types of wrestling. I'm gonna try and explain what I feel about this. Like being a wrestling fan in New York City in the 1970s versus being a wrestling fan in Memphis, Tennessee in the 1970s. I think there's a few huge differences. And New York centric people can back me up here. Okay. Wrestling was a subculture in those days, 70s, 80s. It was like a, especially before Hogan, it was like this underground, almost like a punk rock subculture. But the thing is, outside of that bubble, if you were a serious pro wrestling fan in New York or thereabouts, to the average person, that was like one step above being considered like mentally handicapped to the average person. It was the kind of thing you didn't want girls to know about. John McAdam has talked about this. It would be poison to meeting girls.
Oh, I talk about it all the
You
time,
were
yeah.
you were looked down on.
Mhm,
There weren't
yeah.
girls at the show. It was like very often it would be like the dregs of humanity would be there. I'm sorry. Look, I'm being blunt here. Whereas I feel like in some of these markets, and it wasn't just the South, I'm picking on the South. In some of these markets that they were different because, all right, here's the difference. In New York City, for example, you had 8 major sports franchises, professional, 2 in every major sport you had. Very serious sports fans. You had the center of the business world, the center of the entertainment world, all the media centered there. It was a different vibe. You had, you would be looked down on by so-called serious, real sports fans. Okay, there was much more of a sense of what's showbiz and what's not. Whereas in some of these markets, they had no professional sports team. They had far less to gravitate around. There was far less going on. There was far less entertainment to be had, and professional wrestling became much more of a community thing, much more of a thing that was more accepted, and it had much more mainstream support. Like when they talk about the Memphis show getting the best ratings of anything on television in a daytime time slot, that would never happen in New York. I mean, it happened for the WWF for a while, but that was when they were on at 12:30 in the morning. They were doing the best numbers at 12:30 in the morning. That's very different. Um, it was just such a different thing. It was like everybody you knew was into it. You wouldn't be as ashamed to say you were into it. There would be not only would there be girls at the shows, the girls would be in love with the wrestlers.
Yes.
This was much more of a Southern phenomenon. I'm sorry, Bob. Maybe I'm wrong. You're a New York fan like me. You didn't really see that in the North. First of all, the wrestlers were mostly hideous.
Oh, yeah.
They weren't really promoting heartthrobs the way they were doing in the South. And you wouldn't find the only girls you might find at these shows, again, I'm being blunt, would be the rats, the ones that were there to hook up with the wrestlers. Other than that, it just wasn't a place for young girls, you know?
Yeah, go back to my era, yeah, teenage girls in the front row going, "Oh, that Mike Paducas boy,
No.
I'm telling you."
Tony Gurria was the only one. He was
Yes.
marketed as a heartthrob. And when
Yes,
they
he
had
was.
Gurria and Martel together, you would get some of that. But like
Right.
even listening, you listen to the crowds, right? Listen to a Memphis show or especially World Class, Carolinas,
Whee!
you
Yes,
hear
yeah.
girls screaming. You don't hear that in Allentown or in Hamburg or at the Garden. You don't hear that squealing sound of girls. They're not there.
They're not there, and yes, in my youth, and here's the beauty part about my youth, though, I segued from upstate New York to the metropolitan area, bang, bang. So it was a whole different feel seeing it in Albany, which is really dairy country up
Yeah.
there, and seeing it in the most metropolitan area of the country, New York City. The vibe at Madison Square Garden had no resemblance to what the vibe was in the Washington Avenue Arbor in Albany. It's just a different whole mess of people were going to these things. What surprised me about the Garden in the 70s. I didn't see my first Garden card till 77, but then it was kind of a regular there from that point on. The thing about it was, it amazed me you'd see the same people in the same seats all the time
Mm.
at the Garden. I don't know how they pulled that off in the days of free, season tickets
I
and
think you
things
had
like
to
that.
have connections for that.
Yeah,
People did.
probably Elliot.
Yeah, but people did have those connections back then.
Yes, they did. And either that or they just were regulars at the box office, maybe. I don't know.
Sure.
It was a different era. Everything was simpler. Tickets were paper. You paid with cash. It was just a different thing. But here's the thing. It was a different type of people that went to the Garden, that went to the Albany Armory. What you had at the Garden, I would say not a lot of kids in the
Right.
70s, not a lot of kids at all. I mean, a lot of seniors, a lot of older people, say in their 30s, 40s, 50s. You'd see the occasional family, and sure, you'd see kids, but now I'd say your crowds are 50-50 split of families and couples, right?
And I think too in the cities, particularly the northern cities, even in those days, you started to see the beginning of fans wanting to cheer for the cool heels.
Right.
Because there was more resistance to that in other areas. Like superstar Billy Graham's getting a lot of
Exactly.
cheers in the
Mhm.
70s, a lot of cheers from that crowd. You could see it. And not only that, I'm going to go back even further because I've seen this. There's the big Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, Pat O'Connor, Comiskey Park match. Now that's Chicago. That's a northern city. Again, this is 1961. There's people cheering for Buddy Rogers. I'm telling you, watch that match. And when he wins, there's people that are, I mean, granted, they're a smattering of people, but you can notice them. And if you look and you look at the detail, who are they? They're these young guys, youngish, trying to be kind of cool and ironic, and they're standing up and they're cheering. And this is the 1960s. And so that's what I mean when I say, like, there's also different types of fans, even in the old school days, depending on where you went.
On our last show, I had Anthony Pyrus on, and he talked about Ric Flair as being, I wanted to be that guy. I
Mhm.
was a nerd in school, he said. I wanted to be rich. I wanted to fly airplanes. I wanted the girls. So he looked up to Ric Flair as a kid because he was all the things that he felt he wasn't,
This
and
morning,
admired it.
sorry. This morning, coincidence, I happened to watch this morning, this is my life, the 1991 Madison Square Garden match between Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair. Probably their most high profile match in the WWF. I was there. It was a house show, but it was a big deal. Significant portion of that crowd is with Flair, and that's New York. A kind of a smarter set of fan, more aware of outside wrestling, more aware of the magazines. I'm not going to say it's the majority, and it's certainly not the kids, but there's a significant bunch of fans holding up signs, holding up pictures of Flair, cheering for Flair. And this is in Hogan's backyard. So, I mean, there were smarter fans who would do that sort of thing. The other thing I want to say about that is that even in this day and age, the one group of people who still believe in it that you will find are children. And there are many kid fans, and I know this firsthand, who absolutely believe. And not even all the kids today, sadly, but there's definitely a lot of kids that still 100% believe it and get into it in that way. But it's kind of sad that it would only be kids, because kids are the only ones that are naive and gullible enough to
Mhm.
still believe. Like, when I was watching that match, the reason I mention it, I watched it with my son. While he was getting ready for school, he wandered into the room and he got caught up in it. And he was jumping up and down, super serious. When Flair wins the match initially, he uses a foreign object. He knocks Hogan cold and pins him. And then the decision gets reversed. And Hogan wins by DQ, and he jumps on Flair and he starts pounding the crap out of him. And my son was dead serious. And this match is from 35 years ago. It's not like it's live or anything. He was so seriously, like, it was so cathartic for him to watch this happen that he's jumping up and down, and he's not even laughing. Like, he's super, super serious. But the thing is, what I saw there is what full-grown adults used to do at wrestling shows.
Your story reminds me of being 12 or 13, 73, Blassie chewing up somebody on TV. The show ends, I go outside, and I'm dribbling I remember I'm dribbling a basketball in my driveway, just dribbling the ball. I was unnerved, right? It was just so I don't even think it was the blood, it was the bizarreness to think that somebody would grab somebody by the face and bite their forehead,
Yes.
right?
And
And
then
the
blood
fact that
comes out,
and
right?
then blood comes out, and it was lurid. I think it was Big Jim Lancaster, and it was this huge stream right down the center. I went, "Whoa." So that was the first time I ever saw that amount of heavy blood. I'd seen blood on TV before, but not to that extent. It was
Right.
like a bloodbath. And I'm like, "Oh, just what I read about in the magazines." And, oh, man, this stuff, I don't know.
Well, we
I
did a
can't wait
whole
to
episode about that, right?
I can't wait to see it again next week. It's like only wrestling can repel you. But again, it's that kid thing. I was still pretty much a kid at 12 and 13, of course. And it's like, whoa, only wrestling can entice you and repel you at the same time. It's an amazing thing, at least old school wrestling.
And isn't that interesting? Because I wonder how it'll be for later generations. Because so many of us that became fans as kids, to one degree or another, early on, were believing in it. You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
what hooked us, even if we didn't 100% believe. Like, I don't think I ever 100% believed, because I started watching when I was 12. So I already had that kind of like 12-year-old, snark to me, questioning everything, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But but even I got caught up in a lot of it, thinking like, I think some of it's real. I think this is real. I think Andy Kaufman really did lose his mind and go down to Memphis and got the shit beat out of him by Jerry Lawler, like things like that. I wonder though how much that affects becoming a lifelong fan, because all of us who are now totally smart and hip to the business and all that, and kayfabe's dead, we all became fans because we believed in it to one degree or another as kids. And I wonder now what'll happen if there are fans that really never did. Like, will you still become a lifelong fan if you never even had that kernel of belief early on in your fandom?
I'm working at PWI in my waning year or two there, and we had a new, I don't know, company president called they were selling, and the new president was name was Ken Gaditis, a very nice man, right? And I'm in his office, and we're talking about the sales, and he's telling me what's going on. Just the two of us having a conversation about the business. And he goes, "What do we do? Things are down." And I said, "Ken, I know, I shouldn't admit this, but I've been around this number of years, and I've watched wrestling since the '70s." And I said, and I'm making a motion with my hand, guys. Wrestling has always been like this: up, down, hot period, cold period. It will get hot again. This was before the NWO and all that other stuff, mind you, right? But and this was when I left. It was still, I think, Warrior may have still had the belt that era when they stopped working there full time. And I said, "Don't worry, it will come back. You're just going to have to determine how you're going to, make things continue to be profitable." And because I said, even I sit down and I go, am I going to write about Hulk Hogan for the 8,000th time now? What do I write about him? Because it was also formulaic back then that I couldn't come up with new, refreshing concepts about
Right.
Hulk Hogan. So I segued to the USWA with people who weren't as big as stars and tried to build them rather than do the hackneyed old, Hogan stuff. The point I'm trying to make is he goes, "All right, you make a good point." I said, "Talk to Stanley. Walk in there and talk to Stanley Weston and tell him what it was like in the early '70s when he first got hot, and then things went in the toilet. You had to do the apartment out wrestling and all that stuff, and then it when they invented PWI in '79, things exploded." I said, "You got enough creativity in the back that we can weather this." That's the way I put it to him. I don't know if he listened to me, if he was just nodding along and smiling, but I just remember that being a factor in I think we're ready for a down period now. I just do.
I think we're
There's
already
some
in it. I think we're
there's
in it.
there's some well, you can't judge it from the, the attendances that they're having, but here's the thing. First of all, there's too much of it. The indies are a cesspool. I'm sorry. If I keep seeing clips like I'm seeing on the indies, everything is over angled, everything is complicated, and
Yeah.
everything is smarmy and crude. There's a crudeness to today's product other than WWE
There's
that
no
I
quality
find
control. You know how
in
it
fact,
was.
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it used to be there was such a barrier to entry, and even promoters who were outlaw promoters, there were certain things you would never dare to do because you'd lose all your credibility in the business. There was much more quality control, and now it's just sort of like everybody just does whatever they feel like doing. And that's really what it is. They just do whatever they want. It's a bunch of friends hanging out on the weekends, and then they go back to their real jobs. And what you're talking about with all the overbooked stuff, that's the problem too. It's like there are some indie promoters that still get it, like Sheldon Goldberg and people like that. There's a guy in St. Louis, Herb Simmons. Sorry, he's a good friend of mine. These are guys that still get it, but so many of the indie promoters don't. They want everything to be Monday Night Raw or SmackDown, and they try and craft these big, epic, overarching storylines that go from show to show. And most of the people are just showing up to see a good show to these indie shows. A lot of them aren't even coming to every show. There's no TV. They don't know what the hell's going on half the time. And it's just these guys. I don't know. Is there language barriers on this show, Bob?
No.
Just a bunch of guys jerking each other off is what it comes down to. They're so into their storylines and their characters. And here's what we did last week. And here's what we're going to do this month. And fans don't care. They just want to see good guys, bad guys, good action, a great show. Yeah. The mentality on these indies used to be, you don't need all that. You're only assuming that it's like what Stan Lee used to say about comic books. You have to assume that every book is somebody's first book. You can't get too fancy. They used to know that. The reason why good guys and bad guys were created in wrestling and why championships were created in wrestling is so you automatically had a do-it-yourself show. The fans know he's the good guy, he's the bad guy. That's the cowboy, that's the Indian. There's the American, there's the Russian, or there's the title belt. That's all you need. It's built in. They could never have seen wrestling before in their lives, and they're going to get caught up. Boo this guy, cheer for that guy. Oh, I want this guy to win this belt. This guy's the underdog. This guy's the bully. That is all you need, and that's all you should need on an indie card that's on a wrestling promotion that's not supported by weekly television.
Right.
That's all you need. You don't have to get fancy and turn it into Raw, because if you do, you're only doing that for yourselves. You're not doing it for the fans.
Another problem is every young wrestler wants to be a character.
Right. They see it as theater, like they're in theater now.
Yeah, and there's the thing. If somebody buys a ticket to an indie show and never been there before, and he comes in doing a character, the fan who did buy the tickets going, "What's this all about?" I don't understand why he's,
what am I
two guys
supposed to...
arguing. I remember seeing I'm watching Gotham Wrestling, which is the indie at a Nyack here. They had a show on YouTube or something, and I'm watching, and the first thing you see is two guys, a tag team, arguing with each other. And nobody knows who these guys are. I'm thinking, why are you bothering? Just show how they work.
Right. Or they'll do, these guys, they used to be friends, and now, they don't trust each other anymore. And this guy turned on that guy 2 months ago. But who the hell cares? Nobody knows. A lot of these people weren't even there. There's no TV. They can't go back and watch it. They just want to see a match between these guys and who's good and who's bad. And I don't know that these guys used to be friends. How the hell do I know that?
Exactly.
It means nothing to a lot of these people in the crowd. Some of them, yes, are diehards that follow the promotion. They know what's going on. Most are not, especially people there with kids, with families. They don't know what the hell's going on. The guy that has the title belt over his shoulder with the big giant beard and the black t-shirt on. Okay, he might know, but most of these other people don't.
Exactly right. Boy, you nailed that one. And I'll say, who does a terrible job of putting their talent over? And I have to admit, I still look at it. Billy Corgan's current NWA. You will tune in and you will see 4 people in the ring you've never seen before and never heard of. One guy is the NWA Sugar Plum Bumpkin champion, and everybody's got a belt. You've never seen them before. They don't describe where they're from or what their accomplishments are, and you're supposed to care about what you're looking at. They do the worst job of building. They have some good talent there, but they don't build it. They just shove it in your face and go, "Here's these guys."
Right.
I just don't understand it. I don't get it. It won't work, and it hasn't worked. So,
and they at least have TV, so you have the ability to create things and build things from week to week. I guess that's all I'm trying to say is indie shows, for the most part, indie promotions do not have TV support.
Right.
And even if they do, because nowadays some indies do have some kind of streaming platform and things that they do, like there's independentwrestling.tv and that kind of thing. I'm still telling you, the majority of people that come to your shows are not seeing that. They're not on
Right.
the internet watching your streaming platform. It does feel very masturbatory after a while. Like you are doing this for yourselves for the thrill of saying, I'm a wrestling booker. We're pro wrestlers. We're telling stories and not sitting down and thinking, what am I selling these customers who just want a great night out and want to see some action and maybe get them to come back? Just give them a good show. Just give them a good show with engaging characters who are not that hard to understand, exciting matches, fundamentals, basics of getting people engaged in a match. That is all you need.
I don't want to sound like a fuddy-duddy old man, but let me just put a period on that sentence you just made. Another thing killing the indies, and a lot of people, and I talk to people, is the fact that nobody has any decorum in the product. Bad language, flipping the bird,
Yeah.
cursing, women being having the clothes ripped. You know what I'm saying? It's like you have a crowd full of kids. It's like when Abdullah used to, at the end of his career, was doing indies. And you'd see a nice wrestling card, and then they'd bring Abdullah out to jab somebody with a fork for 10 minutes as your main event. You think those parents are ever gonna bring those kids back to
No,
that high school gym again? No.
no. And
You
then
just shot yourself in the foot by not knowing who your audience is.
and the other part of that, and I'm sure you've seen this too, is when you go to an indie show, again, no TV, no nothing, and you get now they'll do the segment where like it's Monday Night Raw, and you got the two guys in the ring, the two wrestlers, no interviewer, and they're just having a protracted, dramatic conversation with each other. And this has no place on the average indie show. I'm sorry. The average small time indie show stops the show cold. Most of the fans don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what the beef is based on. They don't know what all this dramatic pronouncements are about. And added on top of that, from a nuts and bolts perspective, in most of these places, the PA is absolutely shitty, and you could barely even
Yeah.
make out what they're saying to begin with. Sorry.
Absolutely true. Yeah. Well, I'll put a bow on this by saying, I'm glad I was around for those old school wrestling days, and I'm doubly glad that I've been around New York City this past 10 days or so, or actually a month. It has been life affirming. I forget how old I am. It's everything good. I'm seeing goodness and gratitude in people. I'm seeing people become vulnerable over their team that they have not seen win in decades. It's been refreshing. Plus, the New York Knicks roster is I hate to say it, I don't wanna sound like a gushing fanboy, but they seem like the coolest bunch of guys I've ever seen in one group in the NBA. No head cases, they all work together. 3 of them played in college together, so it was like they have a togetherness about them. There is no downer to the story, even with James Dolan as the owner, right? Who I'm not a fan of, but all I know is that I remember Korea and Haystacks, the place going ape, and wishing I was there. And now I watch an entire 2-day pay-per-view, and I'm glad I'm at home and I'm not there. I swear to you, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, it's just the way I feel. What do you feel, these days?
Yeah, I miss the energy. I miss
Yeah,
the energy
yeah.
of the shows, and I think that's what, sadly, younger fans will never understand, and it's what the people that run these companies don't understand either that's missing, is, when you went to a show, you would feel the energy. It's impossible to describe accurately of the crowd. It would ebb and flow. Like, it would ebb and flow throughout the show. There might be a match where the crowd's kind of down for this match, not a lot happening. You go and get popcorn, whatever. Then there's a really hot match. And even within the matches, I remember it would get to be so much that sometimes I would get annoyed by it, because there'd be points in the match where everybody would get on their feet. All of a sudden, like a wave of excitement would hit the crowd, and not even the finish. You get on your feet, people are yelling, screaming. And sometimes I'd be sitting down going like, oh, Jesus, I guess I got to get up too, or I can't see a damn thing. But it was because the energy would take hold of the crowd, and then it would calm down, and then it would happen again. So you'd go to a show and people are standing up, sitting, standing up, sitting. It was like going to mass, standing up, sitting. Doesn't happen anymore. People just stay in their seats, and they don't, even when they get excited, they're not that excited anymore. To cap it, I guess those are the things I miss. I miss that part of the show, because for a lot of fans, that was the main reason you went, because you
Mhm.
wanted to feel that, and it's gone. It's gone.
All right. I don't want this to end on a downer. So
The Knicks brought it back.
the Knicks.
And
Listen,
I
I
felt
am
even a whiff of it out here in Connecticut. I did.
dude. I'm 15, 16 years old again, and it's a refreshing feeling. I needed something like this for a myriad of reasons. Like I'm getting hacked open as we talk. I'm having an operation tomorrow, and I'm my brain is in 5 different areas. So I needed something upbeat to kind of take my mind off other matters. So give yourself a little plug here, and then I want to do a send off for you. So if you tell people where they can find you, what you're up to.
Sure. As you mentioned earlier, I have my own podcast, Shut Up and Wrestle, with Brian R. Solomon. I just got, my biggest guest ever, I think it's safe to say, MJF, the AEW World Champion. But I've also had other people on there like JBL and Jim Cornette and Rob Van Dam and Dave Meltzer and all kinds of people and just all the wrestling authors, people I used to work with at WWE, some people you've never heard of, which listen and you'll find it's a fascinating conversation. It's based on old school wrestling history, different guests every week, different topics all the time. And I think people would love it if they haven't heard it. It's Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian R. Solomon. There's a Patreon too for extra content, patreon.com/Shut Up and Wrestle.
And let's not forget about your work with PWI and your books.
Yeah, still, I've been writing continuously every month now, and I mean, like, just not an occasional thing. As an every month contributor to Pro Wrestling Illustrated and Inside the Ropes for the last 6 or 7 years now. I'm blessed to do that. I've written 6 books, 4 of them about pro wrestling. Probably the best known are Blood and Fire, The Story of the Sheik, and Irresistible Force, the biography of Gorilla Monsoon, and both still available. Both won the Wrestling Observer Book of the Year award. I've got other things in the works. I don't have an official next project yet, but I hope to be able to announce something soon, whether it's wrestling related or not. I'm not totally sure, but I'm always keeping busy,
Well, this was an important podcast for me to record because, like I say, I want the fans to know out there. Please do not send me Facebook messages saying thoughts and prayers. I don't need them. Save prayers for sick babies and your old folks who aren't doing so well. I'm going to be fine. It's just some stuff that needs to be done. I'm going to get it myself hacked open and hopefully healed up and be back behind a microphone hopefully in about 6 weeks. However, I want you to know that we will have brand new shows that are in the can, pre-recorded before this one, and we're going to continue with new shows. And the next time you hear me, no reruns, no best ofs. I'll be back in time to resume things, hopefully around mid-August. Hopefully. Now, before I go, when I started this podcast, I did it with wild hair because I had left another podcast. It wasn't the funnest situation. We'll put it that way. Not enjoyable. However, from day one, you people out there have really responded to this show. I have never done more downloads I have done in the last 3 weeks. It's ridiculous. There's a lot of I don't even care about chart positions. They are for those of you who don't know, there are podcast charts, and there's positions you can end up in. I hardly care about those anymore because I am like in less than 4 years, we have quadrupled the numbers we've done. It's stupid. All right. And I want to thank you all out there for sticking with us throughout. We brought in a co-host named Joe Puccio. You've taken to him. But most of all, Brian, I want to thank you. You were the first guest that I booked back in year 1, I think it was. You're the only person I got nervous about contacting. I swear to you. Because we both have done the same thing. And I think that you have done it at a level unexperienced before you started. I really mean this. I think you were the finest wrestling writer in America today.
Thank you, Bob.
In not only the books, the magazine writing, ultra professional. I don't know who to compare you to in terms of, but I'd rather compare you to actual sports writers than wrestling writers because you got that kind of a gift. So I just want to thank you for your friendship. Thank you for being here on this particular show because I'm a bundle of nerves. I needed somebody to calm me down a little bit. So Brian, thanks for your friendship and thanks for everything, man. And thanks for this show. You're always a blast to talk to.
It's my pleasure, Bob. Like I tell you every time, I'm always glad when you invite me, and I'm always happy to do it. And I'm always a phone call away.
All you Arcadian Vanguard guys have become friends of mine. It's crazy. I mean, virtually everybody there. It's kooky, but And like I said, anytime my voice, I said this to John McAdam. I said, I guested on his show recently, and I said, and he's a Red Sox guy, I think. And I said, John, every time I'm heard on a Arcadian Vanguard show, I feel like I got called up from Pawtucket. All right, you get the reference. All right, I'm glad. Okay.
Sure.
Well, anyway, it's the Outdated Wrestling Hour. It's Brian R. Solomon. Have a great summer. I hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Bob.
Attention, Gen Xers. If you'd like to explore the era that appeals to you, look no further than GenerationXWire.com. The generation who grew up with elite in entertainment, music, movies, TV, books, pro wrestling, and more finally has a one-stop destination for all their Gen X needs. From Aerosmith to Batman to the Killer Bees to the Twilight Zone, there's something for everybody at GenerationXWire.com. You won't find a more eclectic mix of pop culture content than at the leading website that specializes in the greatest generation, GenerationXWire.com. Check it out today. That's it for another edition of the Outdated Wrestling Hour podcast. We hope you enjoyed yourselves. Write to us, outdatedwrestling@gmail.com. Our website, outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com, where you can find all of our episodes at the press of a button. We will never Patreon you for those. Also on the website, you will find a box that says Outdated Wrestling Hour Fan Club, where for a nominal fee, you can help perpetuate the ongoing adventures of this podcast and our sister show, the Outdated Entertainment Hour, which comes out about once a month. All of it on outdatedwrestlinghour.buzzsprout.com. We're available on every podcast app you can think of. Please join us again. Both the Outdated Wrestling Hour and the Outdated Entertainment Hour are shows provided by Bob Smith's podcasts. The Outdated Wrestling Hour is part of the WrestleCopia podcast network. That's it for now. We hope you had a really good time tonight. And we're out every Friday with new editions of the Outdated Wrestling Hour podcast. So until next time, this is Bob Smith. You might remember me from my days with PWI. Thanks for being loyal fans. Thanks for listening every week. And we always say the same thing at the end of every show. In the words of Ringo Starr, peace and love, brothers and sisters. Peace and love.